Good afternoon, everyone. So if you're watching this, you've probably either had some technical issues or could not make it to my classroom for whatever reason, life occurrence. But here we are, and we are going to go into what you've missed. And there are going to be three parts thus far that we've covered in class. What makes something living, our biomolecules that make up the living things, and then the type of cells. So in this first segment, we are going to be talking about what living things are. So we have the study of biology, and bio means life, ology means the study of, so we have the study of living things. In this class, we're going to be talking about how living things interact with each other and how abiotic, non-living things, influence living things. So how abiotic influences biotic factors. In this slide, we're also organized different things, different organisms or things that would be considered non-living or living. Yeah, so we have the sea anemone, bacteria, our sea sponge here. It is out of the water and it is pretty dead, so we put it in abiotic right there. However, in the following chart, I think one of the listed words was sea sponge. In that, since we did not give you any context, it would be considered alive. So you would place it under biotic factors. Awesome. So what makes something living? What makes something non-living? And you can take a moment, pause your screen, type out a few sentences, just kind of get your brain rolling, how scientists are able to distinguish new things and figure out why they are living and why they are not living. And so some of the factors that they've, I guess, not hypothesized, but kind of the benchmarks that make something living are made up of 8 categories. We have cells, reproduction, hereditary, interdependence, homeostasis, metabolism, DNA, and evolution. And on your screen, we have, I think this side is blank for you guys, and it's for you to organize these terms into these definitions. We have DNA, which is the molecule of heredity. It is our blueprint. It is genetics. And we have reproduction, is creating new life. Hereditary is passing on the DNA or the genes to the next generation. It's the reason grandpa has black hair and why dad has black hair and why kid and why son may have black hair. It has to do with hereditary. We have cells, which is the most basic unit of life. Interdependence is the ability to interact with the world. Metabolism, it's another word for digestion. Living things digest, and when they do digest or when they do metabolize something, they create energy. And it is the sum of chemical reactions in living beings. Evolution is change over time. And homeostasis, I realize I left out a word there, or a letter, is the way that organisms try to seek out a level of balance or to create order from disorder. You never want to be stressed out, and that is homeostasis at play. You don't like finals because that brings a lot of stress. However, you have some of the main reasons that keep you pushing to finish up your finals may be winter break or summer break. So in 7th grade, you should have learned the levels of organization. We have biome, biosphere, biomes. I'm saying biosphere for whatever reason, or biomes, but we have, going from big to small, we have biosphere, our ecosystems, our community, our population, organisms, organ systems, organs, tissues, cells, organelles, smaller than that is going to be molecules, and then smaller than that is going to be atoms. So right here, population, the difference between population and community, or sorry, community and ecosystem, is that community has to do with the interaction between only biotic factors. Our ecosystem is the combination of interactions between living and non-living. So biotic and abiotic factors interacting together. So that's when you throw in weather, rocks, the landscape. Those are going to be influencing how the biotic, how the living organisms live. A population, I like to describe it as your household, your roommates. Maybe you have family members, that's going to be your population. They're of the same species. Organism, that's going to be you. Your organ systems, that's going to be like your digestive system. Your stomach is within the digestive system. You have tissues and cells that compose of the stomach. In this activity, so I guess I did, so if you want to copy that down, that's fine. But just gives you a more in-depth description. But for this activity, I just had you put examples of what that would look like in real life using the organism of a bear. I used a plant in this slide to show that, how I would put each example and put pictures for each level of organization. And when you get down to organelles, are they living? And the answer is, yes, and the answer is yes. Yes and no, essentially. We have organelles such as the mitochondria within animals, and then the chloroplasts that have their own DNA. So scientists have hypothesized that they were once living. But what makes up these organelles is called biomolecules, and biomolecules are the basic building blocks of the cell. They provide energy, they provide structure and function for the cell to be able to make us the way we are. And when you break, the 4 biomolecules are going to be protein, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, and lipids. So let's start with lipids. Lipids, also known as fats, are comprised of our carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen from the periodic table. And as monomers, the single building blocks of fats is called fatty acids. And fatty acids are a single long chain of carbons. The building blocks together, however, make a triglyceride. This triglyceride is composed of one glycerol and 3 fatty acids. You can see a fat within the cell membrane. It's used to protect against outside objects in a sense, but sorry there, I had a little hiccup. But when you see, I guess, things that you can see, where you will see fats and lipids is our cell membrane. And the cell membrane is made up of a bunch of triglycerides. So here's our glycerol, and then these long chains of carbon are fatty acids. And this entire thing is our cell membrane. You can also see lipids are not soluble in water. They do not dissolve, they don't mix, and they end up looking like this. Nucleic acids contain the elements of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Their monomer is a nucleotide, and they look like this. They have a phosphate group because they have a phosphorus right there. They have a ribose group, and then they have an amino acid group, which contains the nitrogens. And the nucleic acid is responsible for the DNA structure and the RNA structure. DNA is the genetic makeup of the cell, essentially. It gives a blueprint to who we are and why we have brown hair and why we're 6 foot tall or 5 foot tall. RNA makes up the proteins, but that's going to be later discussed in how that occurs. Carbohydrates, another simple biomolecule, just like our fats. They're going to be the easiest ones to dissolve by the cell. But essentially, carbohydrates are sugars. Their monomer is a monosaccharide, and which is also called a glucose. That is a single ring structure, seen here, a single ring structure. And when you put a bunch of those rings together, they make up a polysaccharide, also known as starches. And they're used for short-term energy, not to be confused with lipids, which is long-term energy and used for insulation. You can see that in animals that are living in really cold climates. They have a large layer of fat to protect against the cold weather. You also have fat to insulate your organs and to protect them against rubbing against each other. Your brain also uses fats to function. So fats and carbs are very important. We talked about it in class, how diet culture kind of makes the population and makes us scared of eating these things, but they are so important to your cells that I do not recommend restricting carbs and fats at all. Just everything has to do with moderation. Just be kind to your body. Proteins, finally, are made up of carbons, hydrogens, oxygens, and nitrogen. Notice that there is no phosphorus there. They're individually, they're amino acids, and as a polymer, it is a polypeptide. They are made up of an amino group, which is the N group, the R group, and then the carboxylic group. So this is what a protein looks like. We have our amino group, our R group, and then our carbon group. All right, then the rest of the PowerPoint, I just talk about how nutrition labels depict each of the biomolecules except nucleic acids, so that we have our fats here, our carbohydrates, and our proteins here. And they all contribute to calories, which is energy. You need energy to live, for your body to function the way it does. So again, don't fall victim to diets. Your body needs food to survive, and for you to show up to my class every day. So that was my rant. It was just talking about how carbs are important, fats are important. Don't skip meals to lose weight. Yeah. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me, but that concludes cells PowerPoint part 1. Stay tuned for part 2.